She thought she was married to the perfect man, brilliant, admired, untouchable. But one late-night message on his tablet shattered everything. What began as suspicion quickly became a nightmare of betrayal, stolen money, a deadly conspiracy, and a truth so horrifying it could cost her life. This is not just a story about infidelity. It is about survival when love turns into a carefully engineered trap.
It was a quiet Tuesday night in our Chicago penthouse, 2 months before my due date, when I found out my marriage was a lie. Julian was at a hospital fundraiser, accepting some award for his pioneering work in cardiac surgery. I was supposed to be there, a proud, expectant wife on his arm, but a wave of nausea had kept me home. Rest, he'd said, kissing my forehead, his suit smelling of starch and subtle cologne. He left his tablet on the coffee table. I picked it up, meaning to look up a gallery opening, when a message banner slid down from the top of the screen. A woman named Chloe. Heard the speech was a hit. Can't wait for you to come home to me. My breath caught. I thought it was a mistake, a wrong number. But a minute later, I realized I was living in a beautifully constructed cage, and the door was about to be locked for good. I'm so glad you could join me today. Before we get into it, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Let me know your city or country in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. A quick note: this narrative uses psychological elements and heightened drama to explore important themes. Any resemblance to real people is unintentional, but the underlying lessons about intuition and safety are very real. The apartment smelled of rain and the expensive peonies Julian bought me every week. They sat on the marble island in the kitchen, their soft pink petals a stark contrast to the cold dread filling the room. Our home, 40 floors above Lake Michigan, was all glass and minimalist furniture, a place where Chicago's skyline felt like our private art installation. We'd been married for a year, a whirlwind romance that started when I, Eleanor Vance, an art curator with a small but respected gallery, met the city's most eligible surgeon. My husband, Dr. Julian Croft, was handsome, brilliant, and 15 years my senior. His hand felt steady and warm in mine. To our future, he'd toast, his smile reaching his eyes. To our family. I'd clink my water glass against his wine glass, my heart swelling. Everyone said I was lucky. My mother, before she passed, had worried I'd dedicate my life solely to my work at the Vance Gallery. Then Julian came along at a museum benefit, discussing Impressionism with an intensity he usually reserved for surgical procedures, and suddenly my solitary life was over. I was 31, he was 46. His sister Lydia had been cool towards me, but I dismissed it as old money protectiveness. When you know, right? That's what I told myself. Tonight, the rain streaked down the floor to ceiling windows, turning the city lights into a watery kaleidoscope. Our baby was due in November, just before the first snow. Everything was supposed to be perfect. Then the tablet chimed again. Another message from Chloe. Julian's screen lit up, showing a preview. I saw it clearly. Is she asleep? I'm bored. My hand trembled as I picked it up. He told me the passcode once for a flight check in. 1225. His daughter's birthday. His first daughter from a previous marriage who had died tragically young. I watched my own reflection in the dark screen, a woman holding the key to her own destruction. He was a respected surgeon, a philanthropist, a grieving father. He was my husband. I shouldn't have looked. I should have closed the tablet and waited for an explanation. But I didn't. I opened the messages. It was a thread going back months, hundreds of texts, pictures, plans. My blood went cold. Chloe wasn't just some affair. She was his partner at the hospital, a fellow surgeon. They talked about medical conferences, patient cases, and the unbearable stupidity of his pregnant wife. My gallery, my work, he described it to her as my little hobby. That's when my world tilted. I scrolled up, my thumb shaking. It wasn't just an affair, it was a conspiracy. The trust is almost fully transferred, one of his messages read. Lydia's lawyer is a genius. By the time the baby is born, everything will be firewalled. I didn't understand. Firewall from what? Chloe's reply made it clear. And what about the appendage? The appendage, me. Complications during childbirth are so common, Julian had written back. Especially with a high risk pregnancy, it will be a tragedy. I'll be a widower twice over, so sad. The air left my lungs, the room began to spin. What are you? A few weeks ago, Chloe had written. Her name was Evelyn, Julian's first wife. She was 30. They said she had a heart condition, an aneurysm. No one questioned it. He leaned closer in one of their photos, his arm around Chloe, the skyline behind them. The same skyline outside my window. It wasn't love. It was a pattern. My heart hammered against my ribs. This can't be real. You're number two, Chloe's text said. A message from last night. Don't mess this up like he did with the first one. I'm not waiting another decade to get what's mine. I had been following his lead, trusting him completely. Tonight, seeing their words, I knew I had to escape. I shook my head, backing away from the tablet. This is a nightmare. You don't know what you're talking about. She'll be taken care of, Julian wrote in his last message sent an hour ago. My sister is making sure the family stands by me. Your inheritance, your gallery, your baby, everything will belong to us. She'll just be a sad story. He was going to take everything. I looked toward the bedroom. Julian would be home in an hour, his face full of false concern. The man pressed a new message into the thread. My name is Eleanor Croft. I was a gallery owner for 10 years before he charmed his way into my life. I've spent everything I had building my future. This baby, it's all I can give my family name. Leave tonight. Right now. Leave where? I thought, my mind racing. The apartment's security system, the doorman, our joint bank accounts, he controlled everything. Go to the gallery, a small voice in my head said. It's the one place that's still mine. Go now, before he comes back. Don't go to a friend's. Don't call anyone he knows. Just disappear. I looked at the family photo on the mantel. Julian, me, his hand on my swollen belly. Why should I believe a text message? I whispered to the empty room. His sister Lydia's face, in the photo, sneered back at me, because his first wife didn't. Before I could second guess myself, before I could collapse, my phone rang. The display read Julian. The sound was like an alarm bell, sharp and demanding. The fundraiser was ending. He was on his way home. I looked at the tablet, his smiling face in a photo with Chloe. He wasn't the man I married. He was a stranger, his face a perfect mask. And for the first time in our life together, I felt a spike of pure animal terror. When I looked back at the tablet, I saw he was typing a new message to her. The three dots pulsed on the screen. I didn't wait to read it. I didn't think. I just moved. My purse lay on the counter. I grabbed it, my hands fumbling with the clasp. Everyone was at the fundraiser, the city's elite celebrating my husband. I walked, not ran, not yet, toward the private elevator that opened into our foyer. The ride down felt like an eternity. The doorman smiled. Leaving so late, Mrs. Croft? I forced a smile, forgot a file at the gallery. He nodded, holding the door open. The cold night air hit me like a slap. I walked 2 blocks, my heels clicking on the wet pavement. I ducked under an awning and opened the rideshare app. 5 minutes away, I stood there, clutching my purse, one hand on my stomach. The black sedan pulled up. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Everything okay, ma'am? Long night, I lied. He nodded and merged with the traffic on Michigan Avenue. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass and watched my life disappear behind me. Gilded towers, fancy restaurants, the theater where he first told me he loved me. The city I'd called home felt like enemy territory. I opened my wallet. A few $100s in cash, one credit card in the gallery's name, not mine. I had to make it last. The texts were burned into my mind. The grief he faked for his first wife, the way he and Chloe talked about me and my baby, the way he smiled at the table every night and said, "Only for you, Ellie." A year ago, I hadn't known Julian Croft existed. It was April, at the Art Institute Gala. I was there trying to network, hoping to find a patron for my gallery, which was barely staying afloat. He'd seemed like a savior. Now I knew he was just a predator with a different kind of appetite. Julian stepped before a massive abstract painting and murmured, "You seem like you know if this is a masterpiece or just a tax write off." I smiled. He had a way of making you feel like the most interesting person in the gallery. We spent the evening wandering through the Gold Coast, discussing architecture and ambition. He was a tech founder, had moved from the Bay Area a few years back, and mentioned a bitter divorce he'd left behind. By the time we reached my restaurant, he had my number. By October, we were inseparable. By February, standing in Millennium Park with snow dusting the chrome bean, he was on one knee with a ring. "I know this is fast," he'd said, "but I've waited my whole life for someone real. Build a family with me, Elena." I said yes. I was 34, pregnant, and tired of coming home to an empty apartment. We married at the courthouse a week later. No family, just us. We spent a weekend at a spa on Lake Geneva. That was when he brought out the tablet. We were having breakfast on the balcony. "Hey, love, quick thing," Julian said, sliding an iPad over. "For the baby's trust." I barely looked up from my tea. "What is it?" "Just standard paperwork," he said smoothly. "Linking our finances so we can set up the family accounts. Just sign here." The morning was crisp and perfect. I felt cherished, protected. I scribbled my name with my finger on the screen. "Done," I said. "Perfect," Julian smiled. "Now everything's taken care of." I went back to my tea watching the calm lake. I forgot all about it. Until today, sitting in my office at the restaurant, staring at a $5,000 charge on our joint credit card and trying to understand what Chloe meant when she said Julian was building a new life. The charge was from a jeweler I'd never heard of. I called my bank. The Uber stopped in front of my restaurant, a thriving bistro I'd built from scratch. It was my dream, the only thing that had ever felt truly mine. I walked inside, past the bustling kitchen. I pulled out my laptop and logged into my business banking. $72,000, 10 years of savings and sweat. It was my safety net, my baby's future. I hit transfer, entered my private savings account number, a place Julian couldn't touch. I clicked confirm. The screen flashed. Transfer failed. Account frozen. Please contact your financial institution. I stared at the message. I tried again. Same error. Again. My blood went cold. I called the bank's priority line. Finally, an agent answered. "I need to know why my business account is frozen." The sound of typing, a pause. "Your account was flagged for irregular activity and a hold was placed by the authorized power of attorney." I'm the only one with power of attorney. More typing. "Our records show joint power of attorney was granted on February 18th to Mr. Julian Vance." February 18th. The spa, the tablet, the signature. I hadn't read a word. "No," I whispered. "That's not right. You'll need to speak with Mr. Vance, ma'am, or come into a branch." The line went dead. I sat there, the phone humming in my hand, the silence of my office roaring in my ears. Chloe's smug voice from her call this morning echoed in my head. "He's starting over, Elena, with me." The restaurant suddenly felt like a cage. I looked at Julian's cashmere scarf, draped over my office chair. He'd left it last week, a gesture I'd found endearing. Now it looked like a flag planted on conquered territory. I walked to the window and stared down at the Chicago streets, the city lights a blurry mess, and I finally understood. I wasn't his wife. I was his funding round, and the deal had just closed. I didn't go home. I stayed in my office, staring at the wall until the sky lightened. Around 6, I made coffee, my hands trembling. The agent's words played on a loop. Joint power of attorney granted on February 18th. That morning on the balcony, the tablet, the signature for the baby's trust. I opened my laptop, my fingers fumbling on the keys, searching my email for that date. There it was, an email from February 18th. Sender, Vance Innovations Legal. Subject, Our Future Secured. I clicked it open, one line of text and a PDF. "Dear Elena, please find a copy of our family planning agreement attached." I downloaded the file. My stomach clenched as the document loaded. The header read, "Sterling Bank of Chicago. Full power of attorney and joint asset liquidation agreement." Not a trust, not even close. I scrolled through the 20-page document, my vision blurring. Elena Sofia Rivera hereby grants Julian Vance irrevocable power of attorney over account number 7721, including but not limited to withdrawal, transfer, and liquidation rights. Elena Sofia Rivera hereby grants Julian Vance full authority over all business assets associated with Rivera's Table LLC, effective immediately and unalterable without notarized consent from both parties. Near the bottom, my signature. I read the security clause twice. The authorized party may request an immediate 5-day account freeze in cases of suspected unauthorized transfers or financial distress without notifying the primary holder. That's what he done. After Chloe called me, he must have anticipated I'd move my money. He'd locked me out of my own business, using the signature I'd given him while we were planning our family. By 9 a.m., I was on the phone with Sterling Bank. I had showered in the restaurant's staff bathroom and changed into clean clothes. I rehearsed my speech. Stay calm, explain the situation, get this fixed. The bank manager, Miss Davies, listened patiently. I was misled about what I was signing. My husband told me it was a family trust. I need this power of attorney cancelled. I understand, Miss Rivera, she said, but without a notarized revocation signed by Mr. Vance, there's nothing I can do. He defrauded me, I said, my voice shaking. If you suspect fraud, you must file a police report. In the meantime, the 5-day hold is in effect. When does it expire? It was placed yesterday morning. It will be released on August 21st at 9 a.m. unless Mr. Vance files for an extension. 5 more days, and he could just extend it. What if I need my money? You'll need Mr. Vance's authorization. I hung up before I started sobbing. I tried calling Julian. Voicemail. I sent a text. No reply. I called his personal assistant's number. It had been disconnected. I thought about the police. But what would I say? My husband, a celebrated tech genius, tricked me. I was a business owner who signed legal documents all the time. They would look at the PDF and tell me I should have been more careful. Chloe's words came back. He's starting over. I spent the day at my restaurant trying to work. My sous chef Marcos knew something was terribly wrong, so I had the kitchen to myself. I sat at the table, staring at supplier invoices I couldn't pay and trying to guess Julian's endgame. The money was frozen, but I still had the restaurant itself. The lease was in my name, the business license was mine. He couldn't take that, could he? My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. The locks on the restaurant are being changed at 6. Leave the keys. Julian. I stared at the words. He wasn't just taking my money, he was taking my life's work. I locked the front door and drove to the condo we shared on the Gold Coast. I needed to see him. I needed to confront him. By the time I pulled up, it was 5:30. I walked to the entrance, my key fob in hand. It didn't work. The concierge stepped forward. I'm sorry, Miss Rivera, your access has been revoked. I tried to argue, but he just shook his head. Mr. Vance's orders. A town car pulled up and a blonde woman got out. It was Chloe. She smiled as she passed me, a cruel, triumphant little smile, and walked right into my building. I'm pregnant, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Julian smiled. That's wonderful, Elle, truly wonderful. He kissed my forehead, but his eyes were distant. Later that day, I was with our financial advisor, finalizing the trust for the baby. He cleared his throat. Eliza, this wire transfer from last month, $500,000 to a venture holdings group. He slid the statement across the polished desk. What was that for? A business trip, Julian had said, a real estate opportunity in Shanghai. I tried calling him, straight to his assistant's placid, professional voice. I stared at the door to his home office, the one that used to be ours, and the code I knew by heart that suddenly felt foreign. That's our future, I whispered. My brother Leo took a step back from the phone screen. Look, I don't know what's going on, but I have the bank records. If he's hiding something, you need more than a statement. He hung up. I heard the silence of the house. I stood there in the foyer, my phone still raised, and the truth settled over me like a cold wave. He'd taken the money. While I was at the restaurant tasting, planning our future, Julian had been building another one. I walked to his office door, my knuckles stinging as I gripped the handle, but I didn't care. This was my house, my money, my life. Julian's assistant, Chloe, she'd said, was now a gatekeeper, no longer helpful. She'd traded her warm tone for a phone, held up like a shield. Look, he's in a meeting now. If you don't calm down, I'm calling security. Call them, I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Please call them right now. She blinked, surprised. Then she put me on hold. I stepped back and pulled out my own phone, scrolling for my brother's number, Leo Vance. I've known him my whole life, trusted him completely. He'd know this was something sinister. The call went straight to his voicemail. Leo, it's me. Call me back. I tried again, same result. My stomach dropped. Chloe was talking to someone now, her voice clipped and nervous. Yes, it's his wife. She's trying to access his private accounts. Third floor, number 920, Northwest Lincoln Park. No, she's not a threat, but she won't listen. I wanted to scream. Instead, I opened my laptop and searched for anything about Venture Holdings Group. Legal filings, board members, anything. Nothing recent. The last article was from March. A charity gala sponsorship sent from an email address that now bounced back as undeliverable. 10 minutes later, Leo called back. One was a private investigator with a name tag that read Martinez. The other was Leo. Sophie met them at the door of my mind, holding a glass of champagne. I stood in my own living room, my arms wrapped around myself, trying not to look like a crazy person. Eliza, Leo said, turning to me. What's going on here? This is our money, I said. We've been saving for 6 years. I came home from the doctor and our account was drained. And I gestured at a photo from the gala. She's the one he's with, but that's impossible. Leo looked at Sophie's photo. You have documentation? Sophie handed him a metaphorical folder in my imagination. I signed the transfer this morning. My lover met me here at 4 and gave me the account codes. I have the signed agreement, the access receipt, and the offshore banking permit. Leo flipped through the pages of my bank records. His friend leaned over his shoulder reading. This transfer is authorized, Leo said. Signed yesterday, August 15th, at 4:00 p.m. That's impossible, I said. I was at my restaurant yesterday afternoon. I didn't sign anything. Your husband signed it. Sophie said, not me. It's his money. He can transfer it to whoever he wants. Julian Croft is my husband. I said, call him. He'll tell you. The beneficiary listed here is Argent Holdings, LLC. Leo said, owner listed as Sophie Valeri, authorized agent for all transactions. The name hit me like a fist. Sophie Valeri, Julian's intern. Let me see that, I said, reaching for the laptop. Leo pulled it back. Eliza, I need you to calm down. I am calm, I said, though my voice was shaking. That woman, Sophie Valerie, she's my husband's mistress. This is theft. She doesn't own that company. According to state records, Leo said, tapping his phone, Argent Holdings, LLC filed incorporation paperwork for this purpose on August 10th, notarized and recorded. August 10th, 5 days before the transfer Sophie was benefiting from, 5 days after Julian and I had our first ultrasound. That's fake, I whispered. It has to be fake. Leo handed the laptop back to me. Elle, this is a criminal matter. You'll need to contact a lawyer and dispute the transfer through the fraud department. We can't accuse someone when they have legally authorized documents, but it's our savings. If you believe theft occurred, you can file a report at the station. Leo said, his tone softer. But right now she has authorization and you don't. I'm sorry, they left my thoughts, just like that. Walked back down the stairs of my mind and drove away, leaving me standing in the living room with Sophie Valeri, who looked almost as triumphant as I felt defeated. I didn't know, Sophie said quietly in my imagination. I swear I didn't know any of this. I just saw the opportunity on a silver platter. It seemed legitimate. I turned to her imagined face. When did you see this opportunity? Last week? August 10th, I think. I emailed the contact and they responded right away. What contact? She pulled out her phone and showed me the email thread in my mind. The sender was listed as jcroft at Croft Capital. The email address j.croft.private.at.gmail.com, a fake account set up to look personal. They sent me the transfer agreement on the 13th. Sophie continued. I signed it electronically and sent a confirmation of my personal account details, my future secured. $3,400 less than what Julian had taken. Yesterday afternoon, Sophie said, I got a text saying the funds were ready. I met someone here at 4, a man older, really professional. He handed me the confirmation and said the transfer was on its way. It showed up 20 minutes later and cleared the account. What did the man look like? Sophie thought for a moment. 60-something, gray hair, expensive suit. A woman with a building security pass, clipped to her lapel, met me in the lobby. Her name was Chloe, the new concierge. She'd been here yesterday, around 4 in the afternoon, while I was at the architecture firm. She'd given my husband, Julian, a new set of key fobs, recoded the elevator for our penthouse, and effectively locked me out of my own life. She had done it after receiving an email from a prestigious law firm with scanned documents that would take me a fortune and forever to challenge. I'm so sorry, Chloe said again, her eyes full of pity. I truly didn't realize what was happening. I just stared, unable to form words. She retreated behind the marble desk. I stood in the cavernous lobby, my gaze fixed on the elevator that would no longer recognize me. I had nothing. No access, no money, no one. I pushed through the revolving glass doors onto Michigan Avenue. The autumn air bit at my skin. The street buzzed with traffic, and then I saw them. 2 cars idling by the curb. The first was Julian's graphite gray Aston Martin. The second, a black town car with tinted windows. Julian got out of the sports car. He didn't look shocked to see me. He looked utterly indifferent. The town car's back door opened and an older woman emerged. She was exactly as Chloe had described. Early 60s, silver hair in a flawless chignon, wearing a navy blue blazer that cost more than my first car. A leather portfolio was tucked under her arm. Eleanor Vance, Julian's mother. She assessed me with a detached air of someone appraising flawed property. Amelia, Julian's voice was flat. We should discuss this. The woman beside him spoke first. Her tone, dripping with authority, earned over a lifetime of winning. Miss Hayes, she said, her voice deceptively soft. I believe you've misunderstood the situation. Looking at her, Eleanor Vance was the picture of corporate power, from her tailored suit to her perfectly coiffed hair. Eleanor Vance, senior partner at Vance and Sterling, opened the leather portfolio she carried and angled a tablet in my direction. You authorized the transfer of the property into a family trust on May 12th, she stated coolly. This residence is now under my son's exclusive control. I squinted at the screen. It displayed a document with her firm's letterhead. At the top, it read, Irrevocable Trust Agreement, Cook County, Illinois. My name appeared under grantor, Julian's as trustee. The address was my penthouse, number 1600 North Lake Shore Drive, Unit 34C, Chicago, Illinois. A clause indicated the transfer of assets valued at $4 million in exchange for $1 and future considerations. $1. I had given away my home for $1. At the bottom was my signature, a clean digital stroke, beside the notary's electronic seal, dated May 12, 2024 at 11:16 a.m. That's impossible, my voice broke. I would never sign that. Eleanor enlarged the signature. It is yours, Miss Hayes, verified by a partner at my firm. The documents were filed and executed on May 13th. They are ironclad. I forced myself to think. May 12th. It was a Monday. Julian and I had gone to his mother's office. He said it was to set up a trust for the baby, to protect our new family's future. He'd called it nest egging. I hadn't even read the pages. I was so happy, so focused on the ultrasound picture in my purse, trusting. Just sign here, darling, he'd urged, tapping a screen. A quick, easy signature with a stylus. Wonderful, he'd whispered, kissing my temple. Our future is secure. I never gave it a second thought. Now I saw. The tablet hadn't been for our baby's future. It had been for my destruction. It was a legal maneuver to seize my penthouse, and I'd signed it with a smile. You lied to me, I whispered, looking at Julian. You signed a binding contract, Eleanor corrected. Your comprehension of it is not our concern. The firm has the original executed copies. The notary is a senior partner. There is nothing to debate here. The property belongs to Julian. A few residents paused as they passed through the lobby. Doors to the mailroom opened. People glanced over. Eleanor's voice became slightly more performative. I understand you're emotional, but our firm takes asset management very seriously. Your attempt to claim this unit after willingly placing it in a trust is quite a serious matter. I own this place, I said, my voice rising. I bought it 2 years before I even met him. It was yours, Eleanor cut in smoothly, before you signed it over to the Vance Family Trust on May 12th. I have the signed and recorded documents right here. She gestured to the tablet. It is all a matter of public record. More people were watching now, listening. Eleanor adjusted her stance, playing to the small audience. Miss Hayes is clearly distressed. Pregnancy can be a very trying time, but rest assured, this is a simple legal arrangement that has been handled with the utmost professionalism. She made it sound so tidy, so official, like I was hysterical, the source of the drama. You're a monster, I choked out, my voice trembling. You and your son planned all of this. Our firm has a flawless 50-year reputation, Eleanor said. If you are accusing a senior partner of professional misconduct, you are welcome to file a grievance with the Illinois Bar Association. But I must warn you, false accusations and slander carry severe legal penalties. The onlookers stared at me, their faces a mix of curiosity and discomfort. A man shook his head and hurried toward the elevator. I looked at Julian. He had been quiet the entire time, standing near his mother, his expression a mask of detached concern. Tell them, I begged. Tell them how you deceived me. He tilted his head, his look full of faux sympathy. Amelia, you're not thinking clearly. This pregnancy has been very hard on you. Don't you dare, I hissed. We think you need to rest, he added, glancing at Eleanor. We're both very concerned. Eleanor nodded, her face a perfect portrait of compassion. There are excellent facilities, Miss Hayes. Therapists, private clinics. I can provide you with some names. I felt like I was suffocating. The high ceilinged lobby felt like a shrinking box, the eyes of strangers like physical blows. Julian stepped forward, his voice low and intimate. It's over, Amelia. You have no resources, no home, no credibility. His tone was almost soothing. Let me help you. Come with us. I'll make sure you and the baby are taken care of. A cold rage burned through me. I spun around and ran. I didn't see where I was going, just fled, my lungs aching, my vision swimming with tears. I heard Julian say my name, but the sound was distant. I didn't slow down until I reached the steps of the Art Institute, several blocks south. I sank onto the cold stone beside one of the lion statues. My body trembled. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket. I fumbled for it, expecting a call from Julian, another calculated lie. It was a text from an unsaved number. It was brief. The Violet Hour, 10 p.m. Ask for the back table. Don't talk to anyone, especially not the Vances. Marcus. I looked at the screen, fighting for breath. It was 8:20. I had an hour and 40 minutes, and I had nowhere else on earth to be. The Violet Hour was draped in heavy velvet curtains, hiding it from the Wicker Park street. I found the unmarked door just before 10. The bar was dark and crowded, people talking in low tones over craft cocktails. A host led me through the main room to a secluded table in the back. It was the kind of place where secrets felt safe. I needed to feel safe. I slipped into the worn leather booth, climbing the small step to the raised platform, and found a man already waiting in the shadows. The small candle on the table cast a faint glow on his face. Marcus Thorne was already sitting there. He looked even more stressed than he had at the fundraiser last spring. His tailored shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, his designer jacket rumpled, his hair was a mess, and his face was pale with exhaustion. But I noticed his hands first. They were clasped around a glass of whiskey on the table, and a slight tremor ran through his fingers. Miss Hayes, he said, his voice low. He didn't get up, just watched me with eyes that seemed to know my entire story. I sat across from him. You told me not to trust anyone. Why should I trust you? Because I'm the only one who knows exactly what Julian Vance is capable of. His voice was raw, like he'd spent days shouting into a void. And because he destroyed my daughter, I will not let him destroy you. I crossed my arms over my stomach. What did he do to her? Marcus took a long sip of his whiskey. Her name was Sophie Thorne. She was 28, brilliant, driven. She was an innovator in financial tech. She and Julian co founded a fintech startup right out of business school. He smiled, but it was a bitter, painful expression. Julian was the face, the charmer. Sophie was the brains. They got engaged in 2021. By the next spring, he had legally pushed her out of her own company. So fast, I murmured. That's his way. Marcus's jaw clenched. I warned her. I told her he was a predator in a bespoke suit. She told me I was just being an overbearing father, that she knew what she was doing. He stared at his trembling fingers. She saw the truth. My protectiveness was a cage. I'd raised Amelia since her mother's passing when she was 8. She was my whole world. 3 months after her wedding, Leo's voice was low. They pulled her from the Chicago River on February 9th, 2022. 2 days in the water. Police said she slipped on black ice during a walk, hit her head, an accident, but I knew better. His tone became steel. Amelia despised the cold. A walk by the river in winter? Never. And she had a faint mark on her wrist, a fading bruise. I saw it. Someone had grabbed her. An icy feeling crept into my gut. I started looking, Leo said. I ran a security firm for 30 years. I had resources. I checked Julian's past, his finances, his life. And I found them. Found who? The others. He took out a worn, folded document from his coat. He laid it flat on the mahogany table. It was a typed list of 7 names. Olivia Hayes, Leo said, his finger on the top name. Married Julian in 2008. Dead from an overdose 6 months later. Ruled a suicide. His finger traced down the page. Sophia Chen, 2011, a fatal fall in her own home. Accidental. Another name. Chloe Bennett, 2015, a car crash on Lakeshore Drive. Faulty brakes. His finger continued its grim journey. Name after name, year after year. Mia Rodriguez, Isabella Rossi, Ava Kim, Emily Tran. Leo finally looked up. And then Amelia. 7 women in 13 years, all single, all wealthy, all married to Julian Croft for less than half a year, and every last one signed over their entire fortune to him just before they died. Life insurance, estates, everything. I couldn't seem to draw a breath. You are number 9. Leo explained there was one after Amelia, a woman named Emily Tran. Died last year, an overdose, just like Olivia. The method never changes. He marries them, isolates them, secures their assets, and they die. Why isn't he in prison? I whispered. I tried. Leo's voice was strained. I took everything to the authorities in spring of 2022. The list, the bank records, the death certificates. They looked into it. Financial crimes, real estate fraud. They've been watching Genevieve Croft for 18 months. Her role at the family firm, the property deeds, the shell corporations. But they can't link any of it to the deaths. Every death seems accidental. The documents appear legitimate. Julian is clever and his mother is powerful. What did she do? Leo's expression turned grim. She had my business destroyed. September 2022, I was getting too close. One day I'm feeding info to a federal agent. The next my company is buried in lawsuits and audits. They called me obsessed. A conspiracy theorist. They ruined my reputation. I stared, horrified. 9 months of legal battles wiped me out. By the end, my security license was gone. A restraining order kept me 500 feet from Julian and Genevieve. I couldn't talk to the feds, I could only watch. His hands clenched. Then I saw you with him at that gala. You were laughing, holding his hand, and I knew. I knew he'd chosen his next target. Why didn't you just call the police? They won't listen, Leo insisted. Not until it's too late. Once you sign those final papers, Ilara, the accounts, the property titles, it's all legal. And when you're gone, it will all belong to him, just like the others. The room began to spin. The art gallery around us, with its soft lighting and hushed conversations, felt distant and strange. What should I do? I asked, my voice barely audible. Leo leaned closer. We need definitive proof. Something the authorities can't dismiss. Genevieve is meticulous, he said. She has to keep records. There's a vault in her office at the Croft Tower. I've watched the building for months. I know the security routes, the guard schedules, but I can't get inside. The restraining order means I'd be sent straight to jail. He looked at me, his gaze intense. But you can. I shook my head frantically. I can't just break into a corporate headquarters. You are his ninth wife, Ilara, Leo cut in. If we do nothing, you won't live to see next month, and then he will find the 10th and the 11th. It will not end. His words chilled me to the bone. What's in the vault? I asked. Everything, Leo answered. The real ledgers, the contracts, the proof of what he did to every woman, the evidence of how Genevieve helped him. I squeezed my eyes shut, picturing my drained bank accounts, the home that was no longer mine. Julian's smooth voice echoed in my mind. You have nothing without me. Leo was right. I had two options: disappear and let another woman take my place, or stay and fight. My eyes opened. Explain the plan. We exited the gallery onto a quiet side street on Michigan Avenue. The city's late night energy felt miles away. Leo walked with his hands jammed in his pockets, his frame stooped. I walked a pace behind, my thoughts racing. I had agreed, but to what I wasn't entirely sure. There's a coffee shop nearby, Leo said. The Daily Grind, open all night. We can go over things there. I just nodded, too numb to object. The cafe was a cozy spot nestled between a high-end boutique and a darkened tailor's shop. The interior was a mix of dark wood and industrial metal, a classic Chicago vibe. A young man with dark rimmed glasses looked up from the counter, gave Leo a familiar nod, and returned to polishing the espresso machine. We chose a booth in the far back. Leo got us two black coffees. I let mine grow cold. He set an old, sticker covered laptop on the table. He powered it on, entered a password, and angled the screen so I could see. I have to show you this first, he said. It was a digital copy of a faded photograph. Two young men stood smiling before an office building, their arms around each other's shoulders. One was Leo, easily 30 years younger, with a full head of dark hair. The other man was in his early 20s, with a kind smile and a leather jacket. I recognized that face. I had only one picture of him, a small one my mother kept hidden in a jewelry box, the sole photo of my father she kept after he left. That's, my voice faltered. That's my father. Leo nodded gravely. Michael Kane. He was my partner. We started a small private investigation agency in the 80s and 90s, Kane and Fletcher Solutions. We did everything from background checks to corporate espionage. We were good. I stared at the screen. My father looked so happy, so vibrant. He died in an accident, I whispered. December 1994. I was only 4. I know, Leo said softly. I was the one they called to identify him. The words were like a physical blow. Interstate 290, near O'Hare, Leo went on. Single vehicle, his brakes gave out on a curve. The police ruled it mechanical failure. An old car, worn lines. It happens. But you don't think so. Leo's jaw was tight. Michael was obsessive. He checked his car weekly. Oil, tires, brakes. It was part of the job. Our work made enemies. He knew not to get careless. You think he was murdered? I think someone arranged it, Leo stated. We were investigating a major case. Real estate fraud, money laundering. Michael was on the verge of breaking it wide open, then he was dead. My chest felt tight. Did you find out who did it? No. Leo's voice was empty. The files vanished after his death. Our office was tossed 2 days after the funeral. They took everything. Hard drives, papers, all of it. I tried to continue, but without evidence I had nothing. And your mother, he hesitated. She cut me out completely. She said our work got him killed. She took you and moved to Naperville a month later. I tried to stay in touch, but she made it clear I was to stay away. A deep ache started in my chest. She never mentioned any of this. She was trying to protect you, Leo said. She didn't want you living with the mystery of your father's death. I thought of my mom, always so reserved, working tirelessly. She passed from cancer 5 years ago, leaving me all alone. No other family, just my memories. He looked at his own hands. I couldn't save Amelia. I won't let that happen to you. Tears welled in my eyes. I brushed them away. So how do we do this? Leo opened another file displaying a building blueprint. Croft Tower, 333 North Michigan Avenue, 50 floors. Genevieve Croft's main office is on the 50th floor, Suite 5000. I handled a case there in 2022, before they ruined me. I know the building. He highlighted the top floor in red. Security is light at night, Leo said. One guard at the lobby desk from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. model. His servers are on floors 1 through 3, but his private cloud has no physical location. Budget cuts from last year made him paranoid. My brother does a system check every 2 hours, but he usually just runs diagnostics and leaves. If we time it right, we'll have a 30-minute window. What about firewalls? Julian's main drive has a biometric lock. I don't have the password, but I know someone who can get us in. Who? His lead developer, a man named Kenji Tanaka. He works for Julian during the day, but he's been feeding me system vulnerabilities for the past 6 months. He doesn't know what they're for, but he knows Julian is crooked. He gave me the root access code and the location of the backup server. I stared at him. You've been planning this for 6 months, longer, Leo said. But I needed the right moment, the right reason, someone Julian wouldn't suspect, someone who could walk up to that terminal without triggering security. Me. You. I looked at the network map, at the red mark over server 512, and tried to imagine myself hacking my husband's company in the middle of the night. It felt insane, impossible. But so did everything else that had happened in the past 24 hours. What's on the server? I asked. A ledger. Leo said Julian keeps records of every transaction, every shell company, every woman he supported. He's meticulous, paranoid. He doesn't trust physical records. Too easy to find, too easy to trace. Everything's digital, locked in an encrypted drive. Model ZX940 high security algorithm. Do you know the decryption key? Kenji got me the first 2 algorithms. The rest we'll have to figure out on site. I closed my eyes. This was real. This was happening. When? I asked. Tomorrow night, August 17th. The night shift tech is a guy named Ramirez. He's lazy. Takes long coffee breaks. We'll go in at 11:30 after his first system sweep. We'll have until 1 a.m. At the latest, I nodded slowly. Okay. Leo closed the laptop. There's one more thing. I looked up. Your new restaurant, Leo said. Marcus G. Halstead. I've been watching Julian's patterns. He doesn't just target wives. Sometimes he targets their assets, people with joint ventures. Your restaurant is worth what? $500,000. Marcus owns 50%, I said. $425,000 exactly, Leo said. If you're out of the picture, your half goes to Julian as your spouse. And if Marcus is out of the picture, his half becomes contestable. Julian could claim mismanagement, force a buyout, take the whole company. My stomach dropped. You think Marcus is next? I think Julian is already positioning him. Leo said, Has Marcus been acting strange lately, distant, paranoid? I thought about Marcus's voice on the phone earlier, cold, dismissive. Julian showed me proof you commingled funds. He thinks I stole from our restaurant, I whispered. Leo's face darkened. That's how it starts. Julian plants evidence, manipulates the narrative, isolates the target. By the time Marcus realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. We have to warn him tonight. Leo said, Before Julian makes his next move, I stood my legs shaky. Let's go. We walked back toward Leo's car, a clean Tesla parked 2 blocks from the cafe. The streets were nearly empty, just a few stragglers leaving bars. The city felt hollow. I pulled out my phone and stared at Marcus's contact. Do it, Leo said quietly before Julian gets to him first. I pressed call. 3 rings, then Marcus's voice clipped and cold. Eliza, Marcus, I need you to listen. I don't think that's a good idea. I stopped walking. Please, just 5 minutes. I know what Julian told you. I know he showed you something, some kind of proof that I took money, but it's fake Marcus. He forged it. Just like he forged the wire transfer, just like he forged his love for me. Eliza, stop. His voice was hard. I can't imagine what you're dealing with, whether this is some kind of crisis or if you and Julian are fighting. I can't be put in this position. This isn't a crisis, I snapped, my voice sharp. Julian is emptying our accounts. He planned this from the start. He married me for my capital, and now he's gutting the firm. The bank flagged the report for me this afternoon. Liam cut in. A liquidation, $200,000 from our investment account into a shell corp in Delaware, signed off by you. Your digital signature is on the transfer authorization. My heart sank. I never approved that. It's from October 5th, 2 days ago. The bank said the assets are gone. October 5th, the day before Marcus warned me. Liam, I didn't sign that. Then how did your credentials get on the documents? I remembered the documents, the celebratory champagne, the papers Julian had me sign without looking. He set me up, I breathed, just like he did with my penthouse. He had me approve a vendor payment on his laptop. I thought it was for a new textile supplier. Ava, you need to hear yourself. Liam's tone became clinical, like he was handling a delicate situation. You're claiming your husband tricked you out of $200,000? Yes. And your home? Yes. And your personal savings too? Yes, I was yelling now. He used a forged power of attorney. He drained my accounts. He has a fake tenant in my condo. His mother is a county executive. She helped him fake the paperwork. Liam, I know it sounds insane, but it's the truth. I can't be involved in this, Liam said. Our lawyer is meeting me in the morning. If you plan to fight this, you need your own representation, but until we resolve this, you are not to come to the studio. I've already updated the security codes. I'm sorry, Ava. I am, but the business comes first. The call ended. I just stood there, the phone cold against my skin. Marcus carefully took it from my grasp. He's already against you? Yes, Julian must have gotten to him first, Marcus explained. Showed him the manufactured report, fed him the narrative. By the time you called, Liam was already convinced. It's Julian's method. He isolates his target, turns everyone against them, and shatters their reputation. When you finally speak up, nobody believes you. He's going to seize the firm, I whispered, feeling hollow. Marcus agreed. Not if we expose him first. I dialed Liam's number again. It went straight to voicemail. I left a frantic message, pleading with him to check the server logs, to verify the IP address of the signature, to just believe me. I knew it was useless. We need to get into the studio, I declared. Tonight? The server backups are my only proof that the transfer was fraudulent. Too risky, Marcus countered. If Julian is having you followed, and you can bet he is, he'll expect you to go there. Then what am I supposed to do? My voice trembled. I have nothing left, my savings, my home. My partner believes I'm a criminal. You have the truth, Marcus said, and tomorrow we're going to use it. My phone lit up with a text from a blocked number. Ava, I believe you. Be at the studio at 11 p.m. I found something. Chloe. I looked at the screen. Who is Chloe? Marcus asked. Our junior designer, I answered slowly. She handles our client correspondence, manages our sample library. She's been with the firm for 2 years. Can you trust her? I considered Chloe. She was quiet, efficient, always punctual. I'm not sure, but she's the only one who has reached out. Marcus looked uneasy. It might be a setup, or she might actually be on my side. Why would she be? Maybe she noticed something or overheard a conversation. Marcus remained skeptical. Or Julian is using her to draw you out. I glanced at the message again. 11 p.m. That was in 10 minutes. I have to risk it, I said. If there's any possibility, then I'm going with you. I shook my head. No, if this is a trap, one of us needs to stay out of it. You're the only one who knows everything. Marcus's expression was tense, but he finally conceded with a nod. I'll be parked down the street. If you're not back in 30 minutes, I'm alerting the authorities. He gave me a can of pepper spray. The drive to the studio was silent. Marcus pulled over half a block away. I got out and walked toward the familiar building. Lakefront Design occupied the ground floor of a renovated brick building in the West Loop. All the lights were off. I used my personal key to open the front door. Liam hadn't thought to disable that. The studio was dark inside, illuminated only by the faint glow of emergency lighting. Chloe? I called out quietly. There was no reply. I moved further in, past the rows of desks, and toward my office in the back. A desk lamp was on. Chloe Shaw was at the main workstation, her laptop open. She was 20-something, with her dark hair pulled back, her eyes looking weary behind her glasses. Ava, she said, I'm glad you came. She got up and took something out of her purse. It was a single small silver key. I heard Eleanor Vance on the phone yesterday, Chloe explained. She was talking with someone. I'm pretty sure it was your husband. She said, the collateral is in box 107. It's untraceable. I didn't get what it meant, but after everything that happened today, with Liam accusing you and the rumor spreading, it started to make sense. She extended her hand with a key. I made an impression of this from Eleanor's keychain when she visited last week. I have no idea what it's for, but it feels like you should have it. I accepted the key, my fingers trembling. Why are you doing this for me? Chloe's face hardened. Because I know what people like Eleanor Vance are capable of. My own family lost everything to a man just like Julian. By the time we understood his game, it was over. She met my gaze directly. Don't let him win. I wrapped my hand around the key. Thank you. Chloe gave a slight nod. Stay safe, Ava. People like them are relentless. She picked up her bag and walked out. I was alone in the office, the key feeling heavy in my hand. I had just been given my way back in. Marcus's car was waiting at the corner, its headlights piercing the gloom. I got in, the silver key tight in my hand, and shut the door. What did you get? Marcus asked. I showed him the key. It shone in the car's interior light. Box 107, a private vault downtown. Eleanor's secure storage. The access pin is 0826. Marcus was stunned. How did she know all that? She heard Eleanor on a call, I explained. Eleanor told Julian the collateral was in box 107. Chloe copied the key when Eleanor came into our office last week. When Eleanor visited your studio? I nodded. She was there this morning. Marcus's look intensified. For what? I tightened my grip on the key. To have me fired. That morning, just 9 hours before, I had gotten to Lakefront Design shortly before 9. My personal keys still worked. My mind was still a mess from the previous night. The staged fire at the gallery, Marcus's warning, the thick envelope of cash. I hadn't slept a wink. I'd passed the night on the floor of a cheap motel near O'Hare, staring at $3,400 in small bills and trying to figure out my next move. By dawn, my plan was to go to the studio, confront Liam, and show him everything. The bank statements, the doctored signature, the whole pattern of deception. But as I turned the key in the lock, I knew something was very wrong. The office lights were on. I could hear voices from the main conference room. Hushed and serious tones, far too many people for a Friday morning. I walked towards the sound. A dozen of our employees were seated around a large table, designers, project leads, the new intern we hired in June. Liam stood at the front, his posture rigid, his face a mask. And standing next to him, looking perfectly at ease in a tailored navy suit, was Eleanor Vance. She glanced up as I entered, her expression unreadable. Miss Hayes, we were waiting for you. I stopped at the entrance. What is this? Please take a seat, I'll stand. Eleanor's smile was thin. She opened the portfolio and produced a folder of documents. This is a mandatory staff meeting. As of 8:45 this morning, Lakefront Design was alerted to severe financial discrepancies within your corporate accounts. A cold dread filled me. What are you talking about? She slid a paper down the polished table. I didn't reach for it. One of our designers, a young woman named Sarah, picked it up. She read it, then looked at me with an expression of pure disbelief. That is a liquidation order, Eleanor stated, dated October 5th, for $200,000 transferred from your investment account to a private entity in Delaware. The order was executed with your authenticated digital signature and processed by Northern Trust. That's a forgery, I said, my own voice sounding faint. I didn't authorize that transfer. The transaction has been verified by the bank, Eleanor said, ignoring me completely. Mr. Carter contacted my office this morning in my official role as a deputy clerk for Cook County Records. Given the clear evidence of fraud and its ties to county business filings, I have been asked to manage the transition. I stared at Liam, but he refused to look at me. Liam, I pleaded, you know this isn't me. You know I'd never, Ava. His voice was soft, resigned. I reviewed the transaction records. I spoke with the bank and our auditors. The funds are gone. Julian forged my signature. Effective immediately, Eleanor's voice cut in, sharp as glass. Ava Hayes is terminated from Lakefront Design on the grounds of gross misconduct and embezzlement. All security access has been revoked. All county permits bearing her name as a principal are under review. Building security will escort her out. The room fell into a dead silence. I looked at the faces around the table. Sarah quickly looked away. None of them would meet my eye. Not Leo, not the sous chefs, not the servers I'd trained for years. They just polished glasses or stared at the floor, anywhere but at me. You can't be serious, I whispered across our marble island. It's what's best, Julian said, his voice flat. A courier I didn't recognize stood awkwardly in the foyer of our penthouse, holding a legal envelope. For Elena Vance, he mumbled. Julian finally looked at me, his face a mask of exhausted resignation. I'm sorry, Elena, I have to protect my family's interests. The courier stepped forward. Ma'am? I wanted to scream. I wanted to shatter the wine glasses on the counter, to shake Julian until he admitted what his associate Chloe was doing to us. But the staff was watching. They would all tell this story later. How Elena Vance had a meltdown. How she was losing her grip. How Julian had no choice. So I just stood there. The courier left the envelope on the console. I grabbed my purse, my favorite chef's knife from the block, a worn cookbook. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the knife. No one said a word. I walked to the elevator, the doors closing on the life I thought I had. I stepped out onto Michigan Avenue into the humid August evening, clutching the fragments of my world. A few tourists on the sidewalk turned to stare, a couple taking a selfie, a busker playing sax, all witnesses to my quiet humiliation. I made it to the corner before I had to lean against the wall just to breathe. Now, sitting in my brother's car 11 hours later, the memory was a film playing in my mind. He froze you out in your own home, Leo said softly. Chloe wanted him to, I said. She needs him to believe I'm unstable. So when I fight back, when I tell people she's trying to ruin me, they'll just see the crazy wife he had to leave. Leo's grip tightened on the steering wheel. She's systematically dismantling you. Every friend, every dollar, every piece of who you are. And it's working. He eased the car into traffic. We drove in silence for a few blocks, heading south along the lakefront. I pressed my cheek against the cool passenger window, watching the city lights smear into long ribbons. Then my stomach clenched, not from stress, not from fear, but something else entirely. A wave of sickness so abrupt, so powerful it stole my breath. Stop the car, I choked out. Leo veered into a parking lane. I fumbled with the door and scrambled out, just making it to a decorative planter before I got sick. Over and over until my whole body ached. I sagged against the brick wall, gripping the cold stone, seeing my own ghastly reflection in a darkened storefront window. Pale, eyes shadowed, my hair a mess. I looked like a ghost, and then it hit me. 2 weeks. I was 2 weeks late. I'd been so lost in the drama with Julian and Chloe, the fights, the frozen joint accounts, the lies about the restaurant funding, that I'd completely lost track. My hand went to my stomach. Oh no. Not now, anything but this. A light tap on my shoulder. Elena. Leo's voice was tight with worry. Are you all right? I pushed myself upright, smoothing my shirt. Yeah, I'm fine, just nerves. I took a deep breath and walked back to the car. Leo watched me, his brow furrowed. You don't look fine. I will be, I lied. We got back in. Leo drove. I sat perfectly still, my hand hovering over my abdomen, the weight of what I suspected settling in my gut. Tomorrow I'd meet with a lawyer. Tomorrow I'd start the fight. But in that moment, all I could think was that I might be carrying the child of the man who was letting his family destroy me. We drove on. Leo kept shooting worried glances my way. I stared out at the dark water of the lake, my hand pressed to my stomach, trying to deny what I already knew. After a few more blocks, I finally said, Can you take me to a pharmacy? Leo's gaze snapped to me. Now, please. He didn't ask questions, just made a sharp turn onto Roosevelt and found an all-night drugstore 3 blocks down. The lights inside were blindingly bright, casting a sterile, unnatural haze over everything. I'll be right here, Leo said. I gave him a weak nod and went inside. The automatic doors hissed open. The store was quiet. Just the young cashier, absorbed in his phone, and a man buying a pack of cigarettes. I walked past the cosmetics, past the seasonal decorations, to the back corner where the pharmacy was. The pregnancy tests were right there, next to the family planning items. I picked up two different kinds, just to be certain, and went to the checkout. The cashier scanned them without a flicker of interest. 21.74, he mumbled. I paid with the cash Leo had given me. The women's restroom was in the back, past the row of empty aisles. I slipped inside, one stall. The fluorescent light above hummed loudly. The lock on the door was busted. My hands trembled as I opened the first box. The instructions were brutally simple. 5 seconds, 3 minutes, one line, no. Two lines, yes, I did it. I placed the plastic stick on the edge of the sink, then pulled out my phone and started the timer. 3 minutes. As the seconds ticked by, I looked at my reflection. I looked awful. My hair was wild, my eyes were bloodshot, and my skin was so pale it looked translucent. I looked like a woman who had lost her entire world, and I had. But if two lines appeared, I hadn't just lost it all. I was shackled to Julian and his toxic family forever. I tried to pinpoint my last cycle. Early July, between menu tastings and investor meetings, all wrapped up in the glow of what I thought was a happy marriage I just hadn't noticed. Then the ground gave way, the arguments, the cold shoulders, the lies from Chloe, and I hadn't thought about anything but surviving the day. 2 weeks late, maybe more. My phone buzzed. I reached for the test. Two vivid pink lines. I stared, praying they were a mistake, a cruel joke. But they were sharp and clear. They didn't waver, just sat there, absolute and damning. Pregnant. Maybe 6 weeks. That would place it right around our anniversary trip to Lake Geneva. The weekend Julian had promised me the restaurant funding was secure. The weekend his sister Chloe had called a dozen times. I'd been carrying his child for over a month and had no idea. My knees buckled. I sank to the grimy floor, the test still in my hand, and I just broke. Not quite weeping, but ragged, ugly sobs that bounced off the tiled walls. This was Julian's baby, the child of a man who was letting his venomous half-sister dismantle my life, piece by piece. A woman who was jealous of everything I had, and now I was pregnant. If they knew, they would use it. Custody filings, claims of maternal incompetence, a legal chain that would bind me to them for 18 years, even if I managed to break free. Or worse, Chloe would see the baby as a threat, another true heir to the Vance fortune, another rival to be neutralized. I thought of the choices I never wanted to consider, ending it, giving it up, running away and starting over alone. But as the thought swirled, I knew I couldn't. This baby, this tiny life inside me, hadn't chosen Julian as a father. It hadn't chosen any of this mess. Neither had I. I spread my hand over my flat stomach. I'm sorry, I whispered to it. I'm so, so sorry you're stuck with us. But I refused to let Chloe win. Not now. If I was going to bring a child into this chaos, I would be damned if I didn't build it a safe future, one where its father's family couldn't poison its life. I pushed myself up, wiped my eyes, and faced the mirror again. I no longer looked like someone who had lost everything. I looked like someone who had everything to fight for. I tucked the test into my purse and left the cafe restroom. Marcus was by his car across the street, his shoulders tense. He saw me and his face was grim. I walked over, my voice catching in my throat. He just looked at me. Marcus, I finally said, I'm pregnant. A silence stretched between us on the busy sidewalk. I watched his expression shift from shock to a deep, gut-wrenching fear. Does Julian know? He asked quietly. No, and he can't, I insisted. Marcus's tone grew sharp. If he finds out, he'll use it. He'll claim you're unstable, fight for custody, tie you up in court forever. Or worse, he'll see the baby as a loose end and speed up his plans. You think he'd harm me while I'm pregnant? I think he's hurt people for far less, Marcus said. And if you die before the birth, he gets everything as the grieving husband. The baby just vanishes. A chill went down my spine. Then he is not finding out, I said, until he is behind bars. Marcus searched my eyes. What's your next move? I'm keeping my baby, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'll make sure this child knows its father is a monster. but that they are safe and never have to fear him. A flicker of pride crossed Marcus's face. Your dad would be so proud. My throat closed up. I hope so. Marcus straightened up. We have no time to lose. To protect that child, we need concrete proof, and we need it tonight. Tonight, I repeated. I thought the data was still encrypted. It was, Marcus said, before Julian forced you out of the company, before Isabel ruined your name. And before this, he nodded toward my stomach. The longer we wait, the more time Julian has to realize you're still in Boston, to find you and to finish what he started. We move now. I met his gaze. Are we even ready? No, Marcus admitted. But I don't believe we have another option. I handed him the small drive from my bag. Server access, partition 47, he 0826. All right, I agreed. Let's do it. We got into his sedan. Marcus started the car and drove out, heading north toward the river. The Boston skyline rose before us, a wall of light against the dark. Somewhere in that city, on a hidden server owned by Julian's firm, was the evidence I needed. The financial records, the secret contracts, the files on 3 people who vanished. I laid a hand on my belly. We're putting a stop to this, I murmured. I swear. Marcus remained silent, his foot pressing harder on the gas. At midnight, we were in his office downtown. A single server hummed in the corner. His office overlooked the Charles River, 5 floors of sleek glass and steel. By day, it was a hub for tech analysts and programmers. Now, it was completely silent. Marcus pulled a security key from his desk, its surface worn from use. I designed the security architecture for Julian 10 years ago, he explained softly. He was the firm's head of cybersecurity. They never deactivated my top-level credentials. He inserted the key into the server tower. A small light blinked green. The connection opened into a root directory. Encrypted folders, flickering command lines, the faint hum of cooling fans. Marcus typed rapidly, and I watched over his shoulder, my pulse pounding in my ears. He found the hidden partition. No direct link, too obvious, too easy to trace. We had to go through the network's back channels. 1 firewall, 2, then 3. The access points were old, the digital keys were ones I recognized from years ago. He navigated the system with a muscle memory that was chilling to watch. 4, 5. Marcus paused at the final encryption layer, placing his hand on the mouse and listened. Nothing. He clicked it open. The directory beyond was dark except for a single folder. Servers hummed behind glass walls, their blinking lights reflecting on the polished concrete floor. Firewalls for this account, encryption for that, the architecture of my husband's tech empire. Marcus pointed to a monitor displaying a complex network map. A single node pulsed red. He's got a ghost server, he whispered. Completely isolated, I had to spoof his credentials just to see it. We moved through the digital maze, our commands echoing in the silent room. My heart hammered against my ribs. Every keystroke felt like a gunshot. A partition named the Heirloom Project was the final barrier. A digital lock icon pulsed beside it. Marcus flexed his fingers over the keyboard and began typing a string of code. A moment later, a password prompt appeared. Inside the server was a digital recreation of Julian's first office. A large mahogany desk, a virtual window overlooking a simulated Seattle skyline. Marcus navigated to a collection of framed photos on the virtual wall. Help me find a clue, he said. I scanned them. Julian shaking hands with venture capitalists, Julian at a product launch. But one was different, a small photo in a digital frame. A sleek yacht, the Athena, cresting a wave. Julian's first big purchase. Marcus zoomed in on the photo. Behind it, a faint watermark was visible on the virtual wall, a series of numbers and letters, an access key. Marcus typed it in, and the password prompt shifted. 5 blank spaces appeared. What's the password? I breathed. His note said ATHNA, Marcus said, but I have a hunch. He typed 1998. The prompt glowed red. Access denied. The year he founded his first company, Marcus muttered. Worth a try? He tried again. 2016. Red flash. Access denied. The year his father died, I said. He might have used that. Or, Marcus said, pulling up a saved email I'd forwarded him, we could just use the date he mentioned. He looked at me, then nodded. I stepped forward and typed 0412. The screen turned green. A soft chime echoed from the speakers. The partition unlocked. The folder was small but dense. Marcus pulled out a virtual sticky note and began dragging files onto it. A master spreadsheet sat on top. Gray, utilitarian, the kind of file that looked like it had been edited 1,000 times. Beneath it, a stack of 12 encrypted containers, each one labeled with a corporate acronym VHCIFCR. Beside them, a single audio file with a white tag Simone 2023. And at the bottom, a thick folder stamped with a case number from a private firm Vance Family Trust Investigation. Marcus reached in with the cursor and copied everything, his movements swift. He dropped the audio file and the investigation folder onto the sticky note. Then the containers, then the spreadsheet. What's in the containers? I whispered. Don't know, Marcus said. But if Julian encrypted them this heavily, it's important. He finalized the download and checked the system clock. 2:27 a.m. His automated security sweep runs at 2:30, Marcus said. We have 3 minutes to scrub our tracks. I heard it then. A faint digital chime, a system alert. A remote login from Julian's phone. His icon popped up in the corner of the screen. He's early. What do? We go. Marcus initiated the log wipe sequence and dragged the sticky note to a secure external drive. Stay frosty, Marcus whispered. We watched the transfer progress bar crawl across the screen. Julian's remote session was active now, his cursor darting across the virtual desktop, maybe 20 seconds from discovering us. We moved in the opposite direction into the server's temp files, preparing to delete our access path. My legs felt weak. My breath was a knot in my chest. My hand went to my belly, a reminder of the new life I had to protect. Julian's cursor reached our entry point. We reached the end of the download. Marcus executed the wipe command. We were out. The connection terminated with a soft click, and we stood in the dark, listening to the hum of the real-world servers. Julian's cursor moved over the partition, slow, methodical. It paused on the access log for our partition. I held my breath. Marcus's hand found my shoulder in the dark. Squeezed once. The icon for the log file blinked, then went still. He was checking it. For a moment, everything was silent. Then his cursor moved away back to the main server, fading. Marcus exhaled. Let's go. We transferred the data to a physical drive through a series of anonymizing proxies and out of the building into the cool night air. We didn't stop until we reached Marcus's downtown office. He threw the drive into a port. I climbed into a chair, my hands still shaking. He booted up a secure machine and pulled away from the public network. We got it, I whispered. Marcus didn't answer, just worked. On the monitor, the gray spreadsheet sat half open, its columns visible in the glow of the screen. And on the first row, written in stark black text, was a name I recognized. Vanguard Holdings, 2018, hostile takeover, liquidation, $18 million. He pulled into a secure terminal 2 blocks from his main office and killed the network connection. The city lights didn't reach us here, just darkness and the faint glow of the monitor. 12:10 a.m. He reached for the external drive and mounted it, unencrypting the contents. The gray spreadsheet sat on top, heavy with data, the kind of file that chronicled a war. Marcus set it as the background and maximized the window. I leaned closer as he opened the first tab. The entries were in a neat sans serif font, precise and cold. At the top, a single name, Vanguard Holdings. Beneath it, a column of details. Year 2018, method hostile takeover, leveraged buyout. Assets acquired $18 million. SEC filing closed. March 22nd, 2018. Marcus's hand was steady as he scrolled to the next entry. Chen Industries. Year 2019. Method patent theft, market collapse. Assets acquired $34 million. Bankruptcy filed June 2nd, 2019. Another entry. Bennett Capital. Year 2020. Method insider trading short sale. Assets acquired $29 million. SEC investigation closed. October 30th, 2020. Marcus kept scrolling. His voice was a flat monotone as he read the company names. Coffee Global 21, a leveraged buyout for 41 million. Petrova Logistics 22, a supply chain attack for 52 million. Moss Ventures 23, a hostile proxy battle for 48 million. I felt sick. Each line was a company, a legacy, someone who'd trusted Julian the way I had. Someone who'd signed deals they didn't understand, who'd believed his vision, who lost everything thinking it was their fault. Marcus scrolled again. Fletcher Capital. My breath caught. Year 2023. Method algorithmic manipulation, market crash. Assets acquired $31 million from my father's fund. SEC filing closed. February 20th, 2023. Marcus stared at my family's name. His jaw tightened. His fingers stopped moving. I'm sorry, he whispered. He didn't answer, just scrolled to the next entry. Delaney Dynamics, year 2024. Method corporate espionage, IP theft. Assets acquired $67 million. Acquisition finalized November 3rd, 2024. SEC filing closed November 15th, 2024. 8 companies, 6 years, over $300 million. Marcus moved to the next tab. It was blank, except for a single entry written in the same precise font. EVT Eleanor Vance Trust. Account access on birth of heir. $425 million. Morrison Gallery shares, 80 million. Total assets, 505 million. Scheduled transfer on August 17th, 2024. I stared at the words. My due date, August 17th. The date was my due date. My hand moved to my stomach. Pregnant. If I had the baby, Julian would gain control of everything as my husband and the child's father. The trust, the gallery, everything. And my family would be ruined. You're the prize, Marcus said quietly. That's why he moved so fast. I couldn't speak. Marcus closed the spreadsheet and opened another folder. This time he pulled up the encrypted containers. 12 of them, each one labeled with corporate initials. He opened the first one. A screenshot slid into view. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. The image was of my father's signature on a power of attorney document, forged so perfectly it was sickening. The metadata showed it was created by a graphics artist on Julian's payroll. There was something so clinical about it, so cold. But he wasn't just signing a paper, he was signing away our legacy. Fletcher Capital, Marcus said, his voice flat. He clicked the next container, another screenshot, a woman with blonde hair, the CCO of Delaney Dynamics, her tear-streaked face, on a video call as Julian accepted her company's surrender. Delaney, Marcus said. He opened another and another. Each container held proof. Each file showed a titan of industry brought to their knees. When he reached the 12th container, he stopped. It was labeled EVT. Date TBD. It was empty. Marcus inverted the file's code. In the metadata written in plain text was a note. J must never waver. This data is my leverage. It was from Simone. If he betrays me, I send this to the feds. I stared at the message. She was holding evidence over his head. Blackmail, Marcus stated, against Julian. If he ever crossed her, ever tried to pin it all on her, she had proof he was behind it all. She's been pulling his strings for years. That's Twisted, that's Isabel. Marcus's jaw was tight. She doesn't love him, she controls him. He saved the audio files to the drive, his fingers trembling slightly. Then he opened the subfolders for finances and personnel. He laid them out on the desktop. This is all of it, he said. The offshore accounts, the audio files, the internal investigation he buried. It's more than enough to put them both away for good. Then why do you look so pale? Marcus navigated to one last encrypted file I hadn't seen. It was labeled with the same precise lettering. ER Contingency Plan. He double-clicked. A single document appeared. A calendar invite, dated today, October 17th, 2024. The title read in bold, Eleanor Reed Asset Liquidation. I leaned in. Marcus angled the monitor so I could see it clearly. Item 1, celebration dinner, 7 to 9 p.m. at Vento. Establish loving couple narrative. Multiple public figures will be present. Item 2, sedation, 8:15 p.m. Zopiclone, 7.5 milligrams provided by L. Restaurant staff will deliver champagne. Item 3, transport, 10:30 p.m. Subject incapacitated. Drive to Acadia National Park, Otter Cliff Trailhead. Item 4, removal, 11:30 p.m. Position subject near cliff edge, a 300-foot drop. Push, ensure no struggle marks. Item 5, report morning, October 18th. J reports subject missing. Search ensues. Body found by 10 a.m. ruled a tragic accident due to disorientation. I couldn't get any air into my lungs. They're planning to murder me tonight, I breathed. Marcus's face was ashen. We have less than 19 hours. What can we do? Marcus stared at the document, at the plan, at the initial L. Leo, he said, Julian's brother, he manages Vento. He's been their inside man. I recalled the sudden power outage, the confusion, Marcus passing me the note while Julian was distracted by a call. That's why you warned me at Vento. I said you knew that was the night. Marcus gave a slight nod. I've had a tail on Julian for weeks. I saw him making the arrangements. I knew what they signified, but I got out of there. You did, Marcus agreed, which means they're switching to their backup. What's their backup? Marcus opened the next file in the folder, on the screen in the same cold font. Contingency. If subject is not neutralized, enact phase 2. Initiate public scandal, fabricated embezzlement charges. Use county connections for a warrant. Force a psychiatric evaluation. Oregon State Psychiatric. Neutralized during transit or inside the hospital, disguised as a suicide. My blood ran cold. They're going to have me arrested, I whispered. Or have me committed, Marcus said. Exactly what they did to my brother. I looked at the hidden ledger, the audio files, the murder plan. What are we supposed to do? I asked. Marcus closed the laptop. We leak it all, he said, before they can silence us. Wait, I'm going to show you the liquidation plan. Yes, they actually created a schedule to murder me. Comment reveal if you want to see the details. A warning, the following contains a fictional scenario for awareness. If that's not for you, feel free to scroll on. But if you continue, you'll see how predators operate. Marcus didn't close the file. He just sat there, staring at the timeline, the color draining from his face. Show me again, I said. I need to see exactly what they intended. He maximized the window and angled the screen. Eleanor Reed liquidation schedule. Date, October 15th, 2024. Phase 1, dinner, 7 to 9 p.m. Vento restaurant. Establish alibi. Subject must be seen interacting with Jay in a public setting. At least 6 confirmed witnesses. Phase 2, sedation, 8:15. PM Agent L, Leo Ashford, restaurant owner, will deliver complimentary champagne. Zopiclone, 7.5 milligrams, pre-mixed in the glass. Subject will show effects within 10 to 15 minutes. Dizziness, slurred speech, impaired coordination. Jay will help subject to the car, claiming she has had too much to drink. Phase 3, transport, 10 to 10:30 p.m., drive to Acadia National Park. Otter Cliff parking area. GPS coordinates 44.3, 06 degrees north, 68.189, 1 degrees west. No security cameras. Light traffic after 9 p.m. phase 4. Staging 10:30 to 11:15 p.m. escort. Subject 1/4 mile down the path to the main overlook. Elevation gain 300 feet. Subject will be compliant but disoriented. Place subject near the cliff's edge. Phase 5, execution 11:30 p.m. Push subject from behind off the cliff. A 300-foot drop onto rocks below. Ensure the fall seems accidental. No defensive marks, no indication of a fight. Zopiclone becomes undetectable in the system within 16 hours. A toxicology report will be inconclusive. Phase 6, discovery morning, October 16th. Jay will report the subject missing at 7 a.m. A search party will be deployed by 9 a.m. The body will be found by 10:30 a.m. A medical examiner, a contact of PAs, will rule it an accidental death due to disorientation and a misstep. The case will be closed in 48 hours. I was frozen. They planned everything, down to the second, Marcus said, his voice hollow. Leo was supposed to drug you. Julian would have walked you down that path while you could barely stand, and then he would have pushed you from a cliff and called it a tragedy. But I left, I said. The power went out at 8:30. I ran. Marcus nodded slowly. That power outage saved you. By the time Julian knew you were gone, phase 2 was impossible. He couldn't drug you. He couldn't get you to the park. Was that you? I asked. Did you cut the power? Marcus looked at me, but didn't speak. Marcus, it doesn't matter now, he said. What matters is that Plan A is scrapped. So they've initiated Plan B. He clicked to the next file. Plan B, Contingency Protocol, activated October 15th, 2024, 9 p.m. Subject evaded Phase 1. Alternative liquidation strategy is now required. Step 1, Character Assassination. 1. Initiate marital discord. Exploit existing insecurities regarding subject's career ambitions. Introduce associate, Chloe Marks, to create emotional distance. 2. Asset isolation. Draft a post-nuptial agreement under the guise of protecting subject's new restaurant venture. Clause 4b transfers her premarital assets into a joint trust managed by Julian Vance. Secure subject's signature. 3. Character assassination. Compile a dossier of subject's erratic behavior, exaggerated reactions, public arguments, private conversations taken out of context. Enlist staff and mutual friends to provide concerned statements. This will form the basis for an emergency custody motion. 4. Legal action. File for divorce. Citing irreconcilable differences and mental instability, concurrently file a motion to have subject submit to a psychiatric evaluation. Leverage contact Judge Peterson to ensure motion is granted. Goal, declare subject an unfit parent, securing sole custody for J. Vance. 5. Finalization. Upon subject's institutionalization or the stripping of her parental rights, all marital and trust assets revert to J. Vance. Estimated timeline, 60 days. Total financial gain, $3.2 million. I couldn't get enough air. They're going to try and have me declared mentally unstable, I choked out, and take my baby. Leo looked at his phone. This is a detailed legal strategy, not just some angry notes. Chloe's name is all over the metadata. She's a viper, I whispered, staring at the screen. This is how she's taking everything from me. This is how she tried to take everything from your husband's last girlfriend, too, Leo said grimly. But you're not going to let her. I looked at the cold, calculated plan on the laptop screen, a business proposal for destroying my life. There's more, Leo said, his voice low. He opened another file on the drive. It's a collection of emails between Chloe and a private investigator. The next file was smaller. The label read IC, Project 11. He clicked it open. A single-page profile appeared. Isabel Caro, age 38. Profession, cellist with the Chicago Symphony. Net worth, $1,200,000. Assets included a vintage cello, a Lincoln Park condo, and a family trust. Marital status, single, recently ended a long-term relationship. Vulnerability, career-focused, emotionally isolated, seeking a patron for her solo project. Timeline, initial contact planned for September 3rd, 2024, 14 days after E's memorial. Below the profile was a draft text message. Hi Isabel, this is Marcus Thorne. I was captivated by your performance last week. As someone who's also navigated a profound loss, your music spoke to me. I'd love to discuss sponsoring your work over coffee. No expectations, just one artist supporting another. Sincerely, Marcus. A wave of nausea hit me. He's already lining up the next one, I choked out. 2 weeks, Leo said grimly. 2 weeks after they say you had an accident. He sends that message. Isabel will believe she's found a kindred spirit. And in 6 months, she'll be gone too. I stared at the timeline, at Isabel's name, at the photo attached to her file. She was smiling, holding her cello, unaware. We have to warn her, I said. We will, Leo replied, but we need a bigger move. If Marcus gets to you first, Victoria will destroy this evidence. He'll vanish, and Isabel is next on the list. What's the plan? Leo started his car. We leak it all today, before they know what hit them. How? There's an investigative reporter at the Tribune, Leo said. Open source intelligence. A pit bull. She records everything. It all goes live online. If you go to her and show her the dossiers, the insurance policies, the timeline for Isabel, if you expose Marcus and Victoria to a real journalist, they can't bury the story. Too many people will be watching. Marcus will have me followed the second I leave here. Not if we bring the press to us, Leo said. I have a contact, Sarah Jenkins. She's been digging into Marcus's company finances for 18 months. If I tell her we have proof of his other crimes, the dossiers, the policies, the timeline, she'll meet us. She'll provide cover. I looked at him, hope flickering. You think she'll believe me? She will when she sees what's on this drive. A sharp crackle from Leo's police scanner broke the silence. A security dispatch called close by. Leo's hand froze on the gear shift. We both looked outside. A figure walked past the end of the alley. Black uniform, a bright flashlight beam cutting through the rain. Marcus's private security. Leo's eyes were wide in the dim light. He's checking the perimeter, he whispered. Don't move. The footsteps paused. The flashlight beam swung toward our car. I stopped breathing. The light slid across the back window and moved on. The footsteps faded away. Leo let out a shaky breath. We have to move now. He eased out of the alley with the headlights off. We drove for 2 silent blocks before he switched them on and sped onto Lake Shore Drive. The Tribune Tower, I said. This afternoon we tell her everything. Leo nodded. 5 p.m. The gala starts. Be ready. I looked at the encrypted drive in my hand, at Isabel's hopeful face in the file. I'll be ready, I said. Leo accelerated, the city lights blurring past. 2 blocks, 3. I started to relax. Then a pair of headlights filled the rearview mirror. Leo, they're behind us. 2 SUVs, gaining on us. The lead vehicle, a silver Escalade, pulled up beside us. I saw the driver's face in the glow of the dashboard. Marcus. The second car, a black Navigator, cut us off, tires screeching. Leo wrenched the wheel, but it was too late. The Prius slammed to a stop, hydroplaning on the slick street. Get out of the car, Marcus's voice, cold and detached through a speaker. Leo's hand reached for his phone. Stay put. The passenger door was ripped open. Strong hands grabbed me. I struggled, but my arm was twisted behind my back, and a bolt of pain shot up my arm. Stop, a voice commanded. Not Marcus. A woman? I was pulled from the car and pushed against the hood. The metal was cold and wet on my face. My head spun. 2 security men in black tactical gear dragged Leo from the driver's seat. He didn't fight as they cuffed his hands behind him. Then Daniel stepped out of the black Navigator. He looked right through me, his expression blank. Daniel, I whispered, please. I called him, Daniel said, his voice hollow. You hacked into a private server, Elena. I had no other choice. He's playing you. Don't. Daniel held up his tablet. I have the gallery's financials, the internal audits, everything. Marcus walked over, looking pristine, in his tailored suit. He regarded me with a faint, dismissive smile. Show her, he said to Daniel. Daniel's thumb swiped across the screen. He angled it toward me. A banking alert. Subject, Citadel Bank security breach, action required. I read the words. My name, the gallery's acquisition fund, a wire transfer for $200,000 to a shell corporation in Panama. The authorization signature was a perfect copy of mine. That's a forgery, I said. Daniel, it's not real. The bank's forensic team confirmed it, Daniel said. I spoke with them myself. Because Marcus paid them off, I screamed, my voice cracking. He forged my name just like he forged the title on my apartment, just like he forged those prenuptial documents. Daniel swiped to another screen. And this loan application, number 2847, approved. Amount, $500,000, dispersed to Thorn Industries. Submitted August 16th, 2024, at 11:52 p.m. This joint venture account required 2 signatures, Ethan. I never authorized that withdrawal. I whispered. Your digital key was used for the approval, Olivia. Julian said the firm's server time-stamped it. 11:52 last night. That's when I stopped. Nearly midnight. I'd been in Marcus's office reviewing the old project files. Julian must have logged in as me using a password he'd stolen weeks ago. It's theft, I said desperately. Ethan, he's emptying our personal accounts too. Check the share registry. He's transferring your stock. Enough. Julian's voice was a razor. He moved closer, and I saw the tablet in his hand. My tablet. The cloud drive, the photos, the payment logs, everything. You should have stayed on maternity leave, Julian said. He unlocked the tablet and pulled up the hidden folder, held it so Ethan could see. This is nothing, Ethan. Look at it, I shouted. It's a record of the payoffs for Chloe. All of them. Ethan, the hush money. Julian opened the first file. Chloe Miller, 2015. Accidental death, $500,000. For a second, Ethan's composure cracked. Confusion, doubt. Then Julian dragged the file to the trash, emptying it. No, I reached for it, but the family driver gripped my arm, holding me back. Julian opened another file. Isabella Rossi. Then deleted it. Another file. A construction permit violation. That's Marcus's niece. I choked out. She died in 2015. He let her fall, Ethan. He bribed the site inspector and made it look like a tragic accident. Julian deleted Chloe's file. Let the icon vanish. Marcus made a low, broken sound. The driver shoved him harder against the wall. Stop it! I screamed. Julian closed the folder and tucked the tablet under his arm. Then he looked at Ethan. She hacked the firm's encrypted server tonight, Julian said calmly. Stole confidential company records. Her login credentials are all over my personal files. The security logs will show her and this man, he gestured toward Marcus, conspiring after hours. That's corporate espionage. Ethan looked at me, then at Marcus, then at the blank screen of the tablet. I don't understand, Ethan said quietly. You don't have to, Julian said. The lawyers will handle it from here. He turned to the drivers. Take them where? One of the men asked. Julian pulled out his phone. Type something. I'm texting you the address. It's a private wellness clinic up in Lake Forest. Room 47. Put them in separate wings. I'll contact our legal team in the morning and arrange a formal statement. The driver nodded. Wait. Ethan's voice was uncertain now. You're not calling the police. The lawyers want to manage the situation first, Julian said smoothly. Off the record, ensure we have all the facts before this gets public. That's not right. It's how these things are handled, Ethan. Julian's tone was patient, patronizing. Trust me, I've handled sensitive family matters before. Standard procedure. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. I wanted to scream, wanted to tell him Julian was lying, that there were no lawyers involved, that we disappear by morning. But the driver's hand was on my arm now, and I couldn't pull away. Marcus's eyes met mine across the foyer. I'm sorry, his expression said. The men guided us toward a black sedan. They escorted Marcus to the garage and led me into the back seat, a woman in scrubs sitting beside me. The last thing I heard was Julian's voice. Thank you, Ethan. I know this wasn't easy. Just make sure she gets rest, Ethan said. She's not thinking clearly. The car door clicked shut. The engine started and we drove. I don't know how long we were in that car. An hour, maybe? The leather interior smelled sterile and clean. My wrists ached where I'd been gripping my purse. My stomach churned with every smooth turn, every quiet stop. When the car finally stopped, a gentle hand guided me out. I stumbled, dazed, and someone led me forward. I heard a keycard beep. Tiled floors under my feet, then another door and a soft push. The door was closed. I was in a private room 10 feet by 10 feet. White walls, a single frosted window high on the wall. No television, no phone, just a bed and cold, empty space. The door clicked, a lock engaged, and I was alone. I don't know how long I sat there. Hours. The sun set and the room was cast in shadow. A whole night passed before I heard footsteps again. A whole nightcat in the silence changes you. I sat on the edge of the bed, my back against the cold wall, and tried not to think about the baby. Tried not to think about Marcus locked in some other room, maybe already gone. Tried not to think about Julian deleting those files, erasing Chloe like she'd never existed. I thought about my father instead. I was 4 when he died. I don't remember his face. I remember his voice, deep and steady, the kind of voice that made you believe everything would be okay, even when it wasn't. When you're cornered, he'd said once. I don't even remember the context, just the words, find the seam. There's always a weak spot. You just have to look. I pulled out my burner phone. The screen lit up the gloom. 7:03 a.m., 12% battery, no signal. I checked my clutch. The attendants had taken my main phone, my wallet, but they'd missed the small things: a pen, a keychain with a tiny LED light, and wedged deep in the inner lining where I'd shoved it hours ago, a small micro SD card. Marcus had given it to me in his office right before we'd gone to the house. Insurance, he'd said. I made a copy of everything from the old physical backups. If something happens to me, you'll still have proof. I held the card in my palm, the plastic warm from my body heat. Evidence, not all of it. Julian had the tablet, the access to the live server, but this was enough. Scanned documents, digital copies, proof that couldn't be deleted with a click. The darkness pressed in. I turned on the keychain light. A weak beam, barely enough to see my hands. The room's lights were on a timer, now off. Or maybe someone had cut the power. Either way, I was alone in the pitch black and no one was coming to help me, except my phone buzzed. I nearly dropped it. The screen lit up. One bar of signal, faint flickering, but there. A text message. Timestamp 6:50 a.m. Unknown number. I opened it. Olivia, this is Leo, Julian's former assistant. I'm sorry, I helped him cover up what happened to Chloe. I can't do this anymore. Safe deposit box 407. Code 0826. The original hard drive is still there. Ethan only took the paper files. Meet me at the Tribune Tower at 5 p.m. today. I'll testify. L. I read it twice, 3 times. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. Leo, Julian's quiet, nervous assistant, the one who always looked away. He'd helped cover up Chloe's death. He'd watched Julian pay people off and said nothing for years, and now he wanted to testify. I didn't know whether to trust him. I didn't know if this was another trap, but the message was clear. The original hard drive was still in a safe deposit box. Julian had wiped the server, but he left the physical evidence behind. Maybe he didn't know about the box. Maybe Ethan kept it secret from him. Either way, the drive was still there. And if I could get to it, the door clicked open. Morning light flooded the room, blinding after hours of darkness. I threw up my hand, squinting. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway. Not Julian, not the drivers from last night. Someone else. Younger, confused. Ma'am? The voice said, female, uncertain. You can't be in here. This room is scheduled for cleaning. I blinked my eyes, adjusting. A morning nurse, early 20s maybe, wearing a different colored uniform than the woman from last night. A daytime shift. She didn't know. She had no idea. I'm sorry, I said, my voice hoarse from hours of silence. I was just resting. My husband arranged my stay. I must have slept through my discharge time. The nurse frowned. Discharge? We don't have any discharges scheduled from this wing today. I work for her husband. I lied. I was checking on her. The door must have locked behind me. She looked at me disheveled, exhausted, but not a threat. Just someone who looked like they'd had a bad night. You should talk to the front desk, she said finally. But yes, the main door's open in half an hour. You need to leave then. Thank you, I whispered. I stumbled past her into the pristine hallway. The air outside was cool and clean, and I breathed it in like I'd been drowning. The nurse watched me go, still confused, but she didn't stop me. I walked to the edge of the manicured lawn and checked my phone. 8:07 a.m. One bar of signal, now steady. I tried calling Marcus, straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. My chest tightened. He was still in there somewhere. Still locked up, or worse. I dialed Sarah. She picked up on the second ring. Olivia. Her voice was tight with worry. Where are you? I've been trying to reach you all night. I'm at a wellness retreat in Lake Forest, I said. Can you come get me? Are you okay? No, I said, but I will be. Just please hurry, I'm leaving now. 20 minutes. I hung up and sat down on a bench, my legs too weak to hold me. The sun was rising over the manicured gardens, casting long shadows across the grass. Somewhere in the city, Julian was covering his tracks. Somewhere Marcus was still trapped. Somewhere Ethan was waking up, still believing I was the one who was sick. But I had the SD card, I had Leo's message, and I had 7 hours until my meeting. 7 hours to get the hard drive, 7 hours to call my lawyer, 7 hours to make certain that when I walked into that gala, I had enough firepower to incinerate Marcus Thorne and his sister for good. Sarah's car, a discreet gray sedan, pulled to the curb. She got out, rushed over, and gave me a firm, reassuring hug. "What's our status?" she whispered. I held up the encrypted drive. "It's all here. The dossiers, the insurance policies, all of it. I need the hard copies of everything, and I need to get into that gala by 5. Sarah stepped back, her eyes determined. "What's the end game?" "I'm going to tell my story," I said, "in front of the entire city, on a live feed, where Marcus and Victoria can't silence me." Sarah nodded once. "All right, let's move." We got in the car. She started the engine and headed toward the loop. I checked my phone. 8:14 a.m. I had 6 hours and 46 minutes left. It had to be enough. The morning was a blur. By 8, Sarah and I were inside the Kinko's on North Clark Street. The backup drive was cold in my hand. I hadn't slept. My phone's battery was at 9%, but I had the one thing Marcus didn't anticipate: a complete digital archive of his shadow ledger, 9 victim profiles, the life insurance schedule, and Victoria's internal legal memos. Inside, the air smelled of hot plastic and paper. A clerk named Leo helped us plug the drive into a secure terminal. I opened the master file. 50 pages, 8 victim profiles, the empty slot with my initials, the payout timeline, the insurance memo from Victoria, and 2 high-resolution photos. The first, a picture of his late wife Amelia with a clear fingerprint on the glossy border. The second, of his first wife Chloe, with a handwritten note on the back. She fell. August 12th, 2003. UT 50 copies, I said. Color, single-sided. Leo nodded. "Give me 20 minutes. As the printer whirred to life, I opened my laptop and composed the message. Sarah stood guard, watching the street. 2 tips at Chicago Tribune. Subject: urgent, evidence of serial spousal homicide. Marcus Thorne and Victoria Thorne. Sent August 17th, 2024 at 8:47 a.m. Sarah Jenkins. My name is Elena Thorne. I am the intended 10th victim of a murder-for-profit scheme run by my husband Marcus Thorne, born August 26th, 1982, and his sister Victoria Thorne, a partner at Thorne Legal. Attached are 2 critical photographs. One, Amelia Vance, victim number 8, died February 9th, 2022. Marcus's thumbprint is on the photo. 2, Chloe Davis, victim number 9, died August 12th, 2003. Note on reverse: she fell August 12th, 2003, Vermont. I have a digital ledger detailing 8 suspicious deaths from 2008 to 2023, with total insurance payouts of $3.2 million. I also have internal legal file number 0R-2023-4418, linking Victoria to the scheme. My death is planned for today, August 17th, 2024. A charity gala will be held at the Art Institute of Chicago at 5 p.m. Please act on this information, Elena Thorne. I attached the scanned photos and sent the email. 10 seconds later, a reply came. Re? Case file CYCT-2024-8833 opened. Assigned to investigative journalist Sarah Jenkins. Acknowledged? Sarah squeezed my arm. It's out there. They have it. I breathed out. For the first time in days, I didn't feel completely alone. At 10, as the clerk handed me the boxes of copies, the bell on the door jingled. I froze. Daniel stood there, holding a manila folder, his suit rumpled. His face was ashen. He looked as if he hadn't slept in a week. "Elena," he said, his voice low. "Sarah moved between us. You sold her out yesterday. What do you want?" Daniel held up his hands in surrender. "Because I was an idiot and you need to see this." He opened the folder and handed me a printed email. From Thorne Legal to Daniel Croft. Subject: strategy for managing Elena's instability. Date: August 16th, 2024, 11:52 p.m. Dear Mr. Croft, A notification confirmed the $500,000 seed investment was wired to an entity called Croft Innovations Group. Account 9000347-H. Then, 30% equity in Liam's tech startup, valued at $425,000, was transferred to that same account at 11:58 p.m. on August 16th, 2024. Liam's voice trembled. I never greenlit that funding. I never signed over my shares. Julian must have cloned my credentials and forged my digital key, just like he did with yours. I stared at the screen. The same night Julian left me stranded downtown, he'd funneled $500,000 and a third of Liam's company into a shell corporation. I'm so sorry, Liam said. I bought his lies. I thought you were the one who betrayed me. But this morning I saw the shared folder notification and checked everything. The story he fed me was a complete fabrication. The offshore transfers, the internal audit, all of it was fake. He pitted us against each other. Jenna looked between us. I need to help, he said. My attorney is already getting Marcus released from McLean, and I'm going with you to the gala. I gave a slow nod. We'll go together. By 2 p.m., Liam's lawyer, a sharp man named Ethan Grant, had secured Marcus Cole's release. The 72-hour psychiatric hold was overturned due to misrepresentation and no supporting medical diagnosis. Marcus emerged at 2:14 p.m., looking thinner and more furious than I'd ever seen him. Liam drove him directly to the museum. At 4 o'clock, the four of us stood on the marble steps of the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. It was me, Marcus, Liam, and Jenna. We had 2 encrypted hard drives, a laptop, and the unvarnished truth. Marcus held one of the drives. It's all here, he said. The financial records, the photos, the timeline, the federal case file. If we go in there, there's no turning back. I know, I replied. Liam handed me a small, discreet thumb drive. Financial crimes, forged e-signatures, fraudulent wires, it's all on this drive. My phone vibrated. A message from Agent Isabella Rossi. Text, received your data packet, en route to the museum. Do not engage targets until we arrive. IR. I showed the text to Marcus. A faint smile touched his lips for the first time in days. They're on their way, he murmured. Jenna glanced at her watch. 1 hour until the gala begins. I looked up at the grand building, the massive columns and the flags whipping in the New England wind. The towering bronze doors led to the main hall where Eleanor Croft had hosted this charity benefit for 15 years. Tonight, we were going to expose it all. We ascended the steps, 5 o'clock sharp, Museum of Fine Arts. The Croft Foundation's annual charity gala was underway. The hall was filled with Boston's elite. Nearly 200 people mingling between priceless art and catered tables. Journalists from the Globe and local news stations occupied prime spots, their cameras poised. The city's influential figures, donors, and the curious filled the remaining space. The air was a mix of expensive perfume and catered hors d'oeuvres. On the stage, behind a podium draped in velvet, stood Eleanor Croft. She was dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, wearing diamond earrings, and that same icy smile I'd seen outside my apartment 2 days prior. A banner behind her read, "The Croft Foundation, A Tradition of Giving, 2024. At the front table, Julian sat with his legs crossed, looking like a man who had already secured his victory. I stood near the back with Marcus, Liam, and Jenna. The laptop in my bag felt impossibly heavy. My hands were clammy. Eleanor's voice resonated through the hall, and that is why our foundation is dedicated to transparency, community trust, and uplifting the very heart of this city. We operate with total integrity. A smattering of polite applause followed. Marcus leaned in. Wait until she opens the floor for comments. I nodded. At 5:20, Eleanor smiled warmly. Now, before we move to the auction, I'd be happy to take any questions. I didn't raise my hand. I just stood up and walked down the main aisle. Conversations paused as heads turned. A camera flashed. Eleanor's smile faltered for a second. I ascended the small set of stairs to the stage. A man in a black suit started towards me, but I was quicker. I reached the podium and took the second microphone before he could intervene. I do have a question, I said, my voice amplified, crisp and unwavering. How many people have you and your son destroyed to build your philanthropic empire? A deep hush fell over the room. Eleanor rose from her chair, her face a carefully constructed mask of outrage. Security, please escort this woman out. But I was already pulling the thumb drive from my pocket, plugging it into the laptop connected to the large screens flanking the stage. The display behind Eleanor came to life. I opened the encrypted file. The first page of a digital ledger appeared on the screen, 10 feet high. Chloe Cole, 2008. Boating accident, $180,000. A wave of murmurs swept through the audience. Phones were raised, their cameras recording. I clicked to the next entry, Rachel Mont, 2011. Allergic reaction, $340,000. Another click, Sarah Bennett, 2015. Hit and run, $290,000. Eleanor's voice was sharp. This is libelous, fabricated nonsense. This woman is clearly disturbed. I turned to look at her. Then maybe you can explain this. I opened the folder labeled trophies. 9 photos filled the screens. Each showed a different woman, young, vibrant, and unsuspecting. Below each photo was a name and a year. Chloe Cole, Rachel Mont, Sarah Bennett, Brenda Coffey, Diana Petrova, Hannah Moss, Claire Delaney, Natalie Fletcher, and then a ninth file. The label just read MH date pending. It was a picture of me, asleep on the couch in Julian's penthouse, my head resting on a pillow, taken just last month after a quiet night in. I never knew he had taken it. I never knew I was his next acquisition. The hall erupted in a cacophony of voices. Shock, disgust, and confusion mingled in the air. Marcus walked onto the stage. He picked up a spare microphone from the table, his voice booming with resolve. "That's my daughter," he declared, pointing at Chloe's picture. "Chloe Cole. She was engaged to Julian Croft in November of 2021. 3 months later, she fell from a boat in the Charles River. The authorities ruled it accidental. It wasn't an accident. He murdered her for her trust fund, just like he did the others." And Mia Hayes was going to be next. A woman in the third row began to sob. Eleanor jabbed a finger at Marcus. "This man is a known harasser. He has a history of mental instability. None of what he says is credible." Liam stepped forward, holding his phone out to a reporter from the Boston Globe. "This should be credible enough," Liam announced. "Julian Croft illegally transferred $500,000 from my company's account 2 nights ago with a forged digital signature. The blockchain confirmation is right here." The reporter's jaw dropped as she scanned the screen. Eleanor turned to her security detail. "Get these people out of here now." But before they could act, the large double doors at the rear of the hall swung open. 4 people in dark windbreakers strode in, badges visible on their belts. Their leader was a tall woman with dark hair, sharp features, and a look that could cut steel. She raised a handheld microphone. "I'm Special Agent Isabella Rossi, Federal Bureau of Investigation," she stated, her voice commanding the room. "Julian Croft and Eleanor Croft, you are both under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. You have the right to remain silent." The crowd was in an uproar. People were standing, shouting, recording on their phones. The press surged toward the stage. Eleanor's face turned ashen. She gripped the podium for support, but Julian remained calm. He rose slowly, reached into his blazer, and produced a thin, elegant stiletto. The blade slid out with a soft, menacing snick. "Stay back," he whispered, his eyes fixed on me. He moved toward the dining table. "Sit down." The tension was thick. My brother Liam stood up, placing himself between me and Julian. Julian's mouth twisted into a smirk. "You should have stayed quiet while you had the chance, Amelia." Then he lunged for my arm. Liam's body went rigid, but he was faster. "Don't you touch her." 2 of Liam's friends from the back porch stepped inside. One blocked Julian's path, while the other stood by the door. Julian froze, seeing he was outnumbered. His sister Eleanor, a high-powered attorney, drove her fist into the oak table. Within 10 seconds, the perfect family dinner was a standoff. Julian didn't struggle, he just seethed. Eleanor tried to leave. She grabbed her purse, her heels clicking on the tile. Liam's friend Mark blocked the exit. I don't think so, Mark said calmly. Eleanor stopped. Her confident facade crumbled. The guests stared in a mix of shock and disbelief. Phones were already out recording. Liam picked up a stack of printed emails from the sideboard. For everyone's information, he said, his voice ringing with clarity, my sister has been investigating her husband's finances for the past 2 months. As of tonight, she has proof of infidelity and a conspiracy to hide marital assets. Thanks to his own carelessness, he gestured to Julian. We have enough evidence to file for a contentious divorce, citing adultery and financial fraud with his sister as a co conspirator. The silence was deafening. I couldn't stand, my legs were trembling. Liam's hand was on my shoulder, a steady presence. Julian's mother began to sob. His father stood beside her, pale but silent, staring at his son. At 8:15, a man stood up from the far end of the table. He was gaunt, in his late 40s, with haunted eyes. He raised a hand. My name is Marcus Vance, he said, his voice cracking. I'm Julian's cousin. I'm the one who set up the Shell corporations in 2022. I helped him divert the funds, and I'm ready to testify. The room gasped. Eleanor shot him a venomous look, but Marcus didn't flinch. He just looked at me. I'm so sorry. I was 13 when I saw Julian ruin his first girlfriend's reputation in 1999. His parents covered it up. They've been protecting him and using me ever since. I couldn't refuse. But I can't stop it now. Liam nodded. We'll have our lawyer contact you. If you cooperate, we'll ensure the court knows. Marcus nodded, relief washing over his face. I will. At 9 o'clock, as people were leaving, a woman walked in. She was elegant, maybe 35, in a simple black dress. Her eyes were puffy, but she walked right up to me. You're Amelia, she said. It wasn't a question. I'm Chloe. Her voice was quiet. I was sent a message 2 hours ago. They told me I was about to be named in a divorce filing. Mistress number 4, a man named Julian, messaged me last week on a work trip. I almost fell for it. She reached out, her hands shaking. You saved me from him, she whispered. Thank you. I was speechless. I just stared at her. 3 months later, in November of 2024, I sat on the sofa in my new apartment, my hands on my belly, 6 months pregnant. The bump was a definite curve now. The baby gave a soft kick. Liam was in the kitchenette making herbal tea. He'd been staying on the pull-out sofa since September, after helping me move out and find a lawyer. He made sure I ate every single day. We rarely spoke about that night. We didn't have to. My lawyer had secured half my initial investment in Julian's first startup. The $500,000 gift from his parents had been proven to be a marital asset. Liam also started a local support group for women blindsided by divorce, helping them find legal and emotional resources. He called it the Amelia Project. Julian Vance was facing a messy public divorce. 9 counts of financial misconduct were being investigated. The judge called his actions a calculated and cruel deception. Eleanor Vance received a $25,000 fine and a formal reprimand from the State Bar Association. She'd be under scrutiny for years. Marcus Vance's testimony earned him immunity from prosecution. He sent me a short email a few weeks ago. I hadn't replied. Maybe one day. My lawyer Rebecca closed the file on the preliminary injunctions. We had recovered over $4.8 million in hidden assets and begun the process of fair division. It would take time, but the fight was on. On November 15th, 2024, the Amelia Project officially launched. Liam was the director. A few of my old friends made up the board. Our mission: to help women navigate complex betrayals and offer a network of support. I rested a hand on my belly. The baby moved. I used to think I couldn't love a child born from such lies. I questioned everything, but this baby wasn't his legacy. This baby was mine. A testament to my own strength. Mine and Liam's second chance at being a family. This baby was Grace, so that's what I'd name her. Grace Maria Thompson. Liam walked over, set a mug on the end table, and sat near me. His eyes were kind. Our mom would be so proud of you, he said softly. I managed a small smile. I think she'd be proud of both of us. Outside, the Boston sky was gray and quiet. My phone vibrated. A text from Chloe. Coffee this week? I want to volunteer. I typed back. Yes, let's build something new together. I put the phone down, leaned my head back, and for the first time in months, I felt my shoulders relax. The worst was over, and my real life was beginning. Looking back, I see how I fell for the illusion. I was ready for a family, tired of the dating scene, and Julian Vance knew how to be everything I wanted. He didn't just take my money, he took my trust. Don't be like me. Don't sign papers without your own lawyer, no matter how much you love the person. Don't dismiss red flags because you want the fairy tale to be real. Don't let a partner's family isolate you from your own support system. Family jealousy can wear a welcoming smile. Betrayal is often sealed with a kiss. Eleanor Vance didn't just enable her brother's affair, she planned the financial exit strategy, weaponizing her legal knowledge. That's not protection, that's a conspiracy. I learned three things. First, always have your own separate counsel. Love requires honesty, not blind trust. Second, the family you are born into can hurt you, but the family you choose, like Liam, will save you. Third, you are more resilient than you know. Even when they try to leave you with nothing, they can't take your spirit. Liam showing up for that dinner wasn't a coincidence, it was a lifeline. He gave me the strength I didn't know I had. If my story connects with you, please share your thoughts. What would you do if you found out your partner's family was plotting against you? Your experience is valuable. And if you found strength in Amelia's journey, I hope you'll subscribe for more stories of resilience. A note on this narrative. While based on common patterns of marital fraud and emotional manipulation, certain details have been dramatized. If this story is not for you, please find others that are.